So, so you may or may not have seen this knife. I do have a video on it. It's a Sativian. What is it? A ST. Come on, man. Let's see what that is. Oh, the light is so bad. It's a ST 152 in K110. And it's amazing. It really is. I mean, for as budget knives go, if you haven't seen the video, it might not have dropped yet. Depends on where I locate this video. The video on this knife may not have dropped, but this knife isn't the purpose of the video necessarily. As the description, which you surely read, this knife's about dyeing these G10 scales. But it's worth noting on this knife that if the video has dropped or it hasn't dropped, if it hasn't, when it drops, make sure you watch this video because, man, I'll be honest, this Sativian is stunning. For a super budget knife, this thing, man, it is big time. But I purposely bought it to dye these scales. I wanna dye some scales purple. And this is one that I bought purposely for that. So we're going to get these scales off and get these dyed up. Now, this won't take me but a second to get these scales off. And so it'll give me a chance to talk. But I have watched a few videos on how to do this. And I've kind of modified it and made it my own based on what makes sense to me. Because you know I'm an engineer, right? Yeah, man. So I did look at the process, and then I also looked at my dye and what they recommend. And so I mean, there's a formula for how much dye. I think it's like 3.5 ounces of dye to 3 gallons of water. And as I'm going to illustrate here in a second, that's not going to quite work for the way that I'm going to do this. And so, all right, see, there we got scales. That's how hard that was. It took, I'm pretty sure that was less than a minute. So I'm just going to scoot all this up here. I'm not going to go too far with it because I'm not going to use my bench here until I'm done with these scales. But I did change my pad back to the inches side. I think the other side of it's centimeters. So I'm back to inches. And the reason I did that was because, you know, sometimes I do have questions about how long stuff is. So like this one, the usable blade size would be 1, 2, 3, a little over 3.5 inches. You know what I mean? So it's pretty handy. So I flip back to this side. If nothing else, even if I don't reference it, it's not hard for me to just lay a knife down and you can reference. So you can look and go 1, 2, 3. Yeah, I mean, and so if it's something that's interesting you on a certain knife, anyway, so you'll have some kind of reference point on length. So enough about that. I wanted to mention that in this video. But I've got a list of stuff that I'm going to need to dye these scales. And so I'm going to get right into it. So I need the dye. And this is RIT dye in royal purple. Of course, you can't see it, but it's the royal purple version. And it's the synthetic version. Synthetic royal purple, and it's in a 7-ounce bottle. And I don't think this is much, man. I think it was like less than $10. So I will need that. I've got a stiff brush that I'm going to clean the scales with to really kind of rough them up and get them clean. I'm going to do that with this mold and mildew foamer with bleach in it. So it's something I chose to use. I don't know that everybody's going to use that, but that's what I'm using. So I'll put that over here with the brush. I'm just going to take them to the sink and clean them off. Not a big deal. I've got the rubber gloves, because of course this dye, you don't want to get this on you, and you don't want to get it on anything else. Um, and then the way that I'm doing my dye, I've already mixed it. There's a magical formula that it's supposed to be like 3.5 ounces of this, basically half of this bottle to 3 gallons of water. And I've seen all the videos that I've watched on this show everybody doing this in a big pan. Well, I don't need a big pan. I just need enough to put two tiny little scales in it. Okay? So, yeah, so that's one thing. The other thing is, I think I'd rather do it in a mason jar and set this in water and bring that water to a boil, just like you would if you were canning tomatoes or whatever. So if you know anything about canning, you end up setting these thick glass jars in boiling water, and that's how you sterilize everything. So these are plenty good to set and get the water boiling in them. And then I can do my dye in here. The dye is contained in here. And then when I'm done, let this cool off and then cap it so that I can use it again. I don't have to pour it from one vessel to the other. I'll just heat it up right here in this vessel. I will tell you, be careful. Make sure that you're sealed. Like, you don't want to be checking the seal on this like here, because it'll stain everything. And you don't want to mix this here on your workbench either, because it'll stain everything. You don't want to pour that in to here over your granite countertop either, because it'll turn your countertop purple. So, I mean, there's a process to do all this safe. Make sure that if you have to, go out and do it in your grass. I mean, if that's the smartest way to do it, because, I mean, about the time that you think that you're safe and you're not going to spill it, like, don't check the seal on this over your workbench. You know what I mean? Because if that's not sealed right, man, if this comes out and gets on stuff, it's going to permanently stain it. So, I can't emphasize enough. Be super careful with this stuff. You don't want to get it on your hands for sure. The other thing that I did here was I created this out of a hanger. So I'm going to be able to hang each scale independently, like so. And I'm going to close this up. I'm not going to do it now because I got to clean the scales first. But these will both fit into that jar. And when I pinch this down, they'll be fixated on there, that when I set this in there, it will force both of those scales down below the surface. And this is shaped such that it can't fall in the jar. So it'll just sit on the lip of the jar, and these scales will be forced down in there. Now, obviously, they'll be making contact at certain points, so I'm going to want to pick them up and move them occasionally, but I think that'll work for me. So that's pretty much the setup, other than a pan of boiling water, and I'm going to go ahead and film that and me taking them out and all that as well. But this is a setup. This is everything I'm going to do it. I don't think you need to see me cleaning these or whatever. So I don't know that I'm going to film that. Maybe I will. We'll see. But we're going to cut away. And when we come back, I'm either going to be cleaning scales or I'm going to be dyeing them in this heating up in a pan. So that's where we're at. The adventure of dyeing scales. All right. See you in it'll be like that for y'all, but it's going to take me a few minutes. Okay, so I'm going to get a little bit of this foam and goo on them, and we'll scrub them up. There we go. I've also got some Dawn here. I don't know. I'm a pretty big fan of Dawn. Dawn does a pretty good job with grease. Hey, I don't know if you know, but so if I get an oil stain in my driveway, I have a bottle of Dawn mixed in water, like in a spray bottle. And if you'll just spray that Dawn on that stain, and every, I don't know, once a week or so, spray some more on it. When it rains, it'll just wash that stain away. It'll be gone. It's the most amazing thing I've ever seen. It does a great job of removing oil stains from concrete. All right. That seemed pretty simple. I mean, there's nothing complicated there. So next pop-up will be, we're going to be dyeing. Okay, so I've got the dye in the pan of water, and I'm slowly heating it up. I don't want to heat it up too fast because I don't want that glass to burst. So it's just a process. I'm going to get it all heated up, and then we'll set them scales in there and see what's up. So in the meantime, I'm going to get a paper plate and some paper towels so that when I come up out of there, I've got something to set it on, just to protect everything. All right, so back in a flash. Okay, so I've got the scales all ready here, wired up. I did put some Dawn dish soap in the dye itself. That was recommended. And then I decided on a smaller plate so that I can manage it better, because the idea is when I take that out of there, I'm going to put that plate up there and get it underneath so that nothing drips. So right now I'm just waiting on it to heat up, and then we'll get to dipping. Okay, so got the scales all cleaned up. They're here waiting. I've got the dye in a pan that's heating up. The water's about to boil. So it'll be a little longer for the dye in the jar to boil. So that's where we're at. We're just heating everything up, and then we'll get to dipping. I've got a little plate here so I can get it underneath the scales as I come out, and try to keep all that dye on that paper towel. That's the goal. So I think we'll do it. I just, like anything, man, just got to be really patient, take our time, take my time, and we'll get it done right. See if I can't improve this camera angle a little bit. This is something I'm trying to figure out, man, how to run cameras when I'm not sitting on that bench. But anyways, we're just heating water, so I'll pop back in once it's a boil, and we'll get to dipping. Okay, so the water in the pan is boiling pretty good. I'll show you here. Yep, it's got a pretty good boil going on, but we're still waiting on the jar to heat up a little bit. No worries. Just let it continue to heat for a little bit. I think we're almost there, almost ready to dippity-do. All right, so the water's been boiling for a while, and the water in that jar is pretty hot. It's on the edge of a boil. It's not boiling, but I'm going to go ahead and do this. So here we go. All right, that worked pretty good. So they're both submerged. I have no idea how long to keep them. So we'll run it for, I don't know, 30 seconds or so, and I'll check back in. Okay, so amongst trying to be run over in the kitchen here, it's been in there for a while, so let's check it. I'm just gonna pull it up and get a look at it. I mean, I don't know, I guess it's turning purple, but I'm thinking more than that. I'm thinking darker than that. So I'm gonna set it back in there. We're gonna let it run. So I'll come back. I'm gonna let it run for, I don't know, until it looks darker. How about that? Okay. So I let it run for a while. Let's take another look. I mean, that's pretty purpley. I'm gonna go ahead and turn this heat off so it stops boiling. And let's get that out of there. and then I'll get it rinsed off. We'll take a look at where we're at. It's pretty purpley. That's what I was trying to get to, I think. Oh yeah, definitely. Nice. All right, I'm gonna rinse these off and then we'll take a look at them on the bench. Okay, here we are. Complete, out of the die. And just for a reference, here's what they look like before. What do you think? They came out perfect. I mean, the jar's cooling off, you know, get the cover back on it, and then I can just reuse that, man. I mean, I suppose at some point maybe the pigments comes out of it and you can't do any more to it. But I mean, I'm really happy with the way these turned out. So let's put the knife back together. I'd kind of like to see it with, you know, all the shiny parts sticking out and, you know, what'd we accomplish? What'd we actually get it to look like? Guess I'm going to put it together backwards. What are we doing? None of this makes sense. What? Wrong scale. There we go. Come on, man. Guess I was a little excited. Yeah, so, man, that wasn't a hard process at all. I'm not really sure what the video is going to look like yet because it's probably all chopped up at this point. I've got bits and broken pieces of video that I'm going to have to put together, but rest assured I'll get it back together and share it. I'm excited for it. You know, I mean, I kind of wanted to take that project on. I wasn't sure how it was going to turn out. I feel like I'm missing a pin. I definitely am. Okay, well, wait a minute. The pin goes here. I'm missing another one of these barrel spacers. That's what I'm missing. Missing one of those. Yeah, so I didn't do the back spacer. I don't know if you noticed that, but I didn't do it. I kind of want to see what the difference is going to look like, and then I can always dye it. All right, let me see if I can find this spacer, because it's definitely missing at this point. Goodness gracious. Okay, it had tumbled off of the bench, but I found it. No worries. Yeah, so I kind of wanted to leave that green just to see the contrast on the knife. And we'll see. But I can tell you after doing the process, I can always do it. Yeah, like, man, that was about as simple as it gets. And I don't have any worries about doing that in the future. I'm excited because I have an agenda. I've got some knives that I want to make purple, man. Yeah, and this purple, this royal purple. Let's put this in. I mean, I can tell you I really like this color. We'll see. I mean, yeah, I kind of like that green. We'll see, man. I may want to change that, but for now, I know why I'm struggling here is because there's screws that go in both sides of these scales, and when it comes apart, the scales remain in the bottom piece. So I'll put one here, and then I'm gonna flip it over, get one going on this side. Actually, I'll probably put both of these in now. Yeah, I like this silver on top of this purple, because I think the tendency on purple like this is they only do purple and then they black everything out. So don't cut me. Yeah, I mean, the process wasn't complicated at all. I mean, I basically just scrubbed it, cleaned it with some soap, and then got the dye up to a boil, and let it sit in there. Moved it around a few times, and then turned the heat off and took them out, laid them on a paper towel, and then I took them over and I washed them, and with a soft brush I scrubbed them to get any remaining dye off of them, and then I pat dried them. Now, there's some talk that you're supposed to let them dry or whatever, but I mean, I've touched these and there's not any dye coming off of these. I mean, I'm not turning purple, so I can't really answer to should they sit for 2 days or 48 hours or 24 hours or whatever. I don't know. I'm just saying that these didn't, and there's not any dye coming off of them. Okay, everything's on and tight. Let's, I can put this away. I need to check that detent. I think I'm a little tight. Yeah, I'm positive I am. Yeah. Let's check for play. Yeah, completely solid. This knife runs so well. Ooh. And I don't think that video is going to be up because I'm going to jump the line with this, and I think the video on this knife probably isn't scheduled to run for another couple of weeks. And but I'm not going to wait a couple of weeks on this. I'm excited about this. This turned out really nice. And I've got a couple other knives that I talked about doing this to. Yeah, so come on, man. Look at this purple madness. This thing's awesome. Yeah, I love it. And I own some other purple knives, factory purple. But, I mean, man, that thing's clean. It looks good. And that nice satin finish on all the blade and the hardware, the liners, looks good. I don't know. The jury's out here. I mean, you could put in a comment below, but I think the next time I do dye work, I'll probably dye that so that it can come into line. Yeah, because it's kind of an oddball thing now. Like, it doesn't make any sense, right? Being green like that. All right. So, Rit Dye, how to dye G10 scales. And so I've got a few knives now. I know this little Amicus, it's on the list, man. I want a purple Amicus. How about it? I dig it. All right, well, let me know if you got any questions below. It's a pretty simple process. Appreciate you hanging with me. I got some editing to do to try to get this thing figured out now, but yeah, that wasn't complicated at all. And like I say, the whole mason jar thing, everything happened in that jar, and now once it cools off, I'll just seal that jar, and when I'm ready to do it, I can use that jar over and over and over again. And yeah, I don't got to take it out. I don't, honestly, the only time I wore a glove, I did put a glove on when I washed the scales after taking them out of the dye. Just because I didn't want to get none on my hands. You know what I mean? Simple stuff. But anyways, appreciate you watching. Take care.